So is Sorare a good investment opportunity, or is it another risky bubble-like proposition that's going to leave a lot of football fans with burnt fingers? In this week's upload, we'll take a look. So over the last couple of weeks, a lot of previous Football Index users and Footstock users have reached out and asked me to create this review. You may have seen it, we put a quick poll up on Twitter and a lot of people responded. Some of which were a little bit sharp, but we'll come on to that shortly after. Also, Sorare reached out, got in touch, said, hey, if you've got any questions, then you can fire them to us directly and we will answer them, which they have done, and I will also include in full inside this review. Now, I'm going to try and keep it as brief as possible, although there's a lot to say, so we'll put timestamps in the description down below. You can tap those links and skip ahead or come back if you need to in the future. So before we get started, my personal opinion in short on Sorare before we get into the long form content, if you like. Now, if you're a recreational user and you want to spend a little bit of disposable income on collecting some NFT type football cards, then sure, knock yourself out. If you're somebody who's collected Panini stickers in the past, it may be something that you want to do. That's absolutely fine, got no issues with that. However, if you're coming to this in the angle of you're expecting to make money, you see it as an investment, then I would say, I personally believe it's absolutely riddled with risks. We're going to go through those in a second shortly. It's not an option that I'd be putting my money into at all, and I believe that you should always manage the risk, see how to value something, consider the downsides, and then make your decisions from there. Okay, what seems to be happening in this NFT type Sorare space is the complete opposite. A lot of people are getting excited about the hype and the potential of making lots of money very fast and just hoping that it doesn't go wrong. I wouldn't advise doing that. So I'm not saying that everybody has to agree with me throughout this review, but it might be a good idea to take the facts that we share on board and make up your own decision going forward into the future. Now, while we're on that point, I've already had a fair amount of abuse from Sorare users just for saying that I may create this review. So I suspect already, much like the Football Index video several months back, there'll be a lot of dislikes and negative comments attacking me below this video. So if you find this video of use at all in any way, share some information you didn't previously know, and you want to make up your own decisions, then please remember to tap the like button down below. So what is Sorare and how does Sorare work? First of all, Sorare is a fantasy football game where you can collect and trade NFTs and enter them into competitions in order to win financial prizes. Now, it's a simple concept and I can see why it's so appealing to football fans, as is fantasy football all around the world for millions of people every single week. Now, the way in which Sorare works is you purchase your Sorare cards, you then hold a selection of cards, which means you can use those cards in weekly competitions in order to win prizes, be it through additional Sorare cards worth some money or some cryptocurrency, which is where it starts to become a little bit more risky. And I can also see why previous Football Index users would relate the two to each other. So I pinged Sorare some questions, as I said earlier on in this video, and this was the answer to the very first question that I posed. Now, the question was, can you confirm the following statements are correct? Sorare game prizes can change any time without notice. Sorare can remove prizes without notice. I see you've got 30 days for your introduction term from the terms and conditions. And prizes are funded by the sale of new virtual cards or Sorare NFTs. If not, could you please correct my misunderstanding? I've come to this conclusion from the following terms in your game rules on your website. So we'll quickly show you which terms I'm referring to on screen now. Sorare's answer was, as any service provider, Sorare may have to stop the service or, more commonly, to make it evolve. Since the service is offered free of charge, we may carry out these modifications without the prior agreement of our users. However, Sorare will never end or modify a tournament that has been announced, and we notify users of any changes that may affect them at any appropriate time. There's no connection between the prizes offered in the SO5 set in advance and the amount or the value of the card sold, nor is there any connection between the prize or the price of the card, which is not set by Sorare, and the chances of winning a prize. To be clear, prizes are not chosen by Sorare only and according to our marketing budget. So I think that that's quite confusing, that answer there, and it feels as though in some respects they've avoided answering the specific points made. They've confirmed that the prizes can change at any time without notice as per their terms and conditions, which is where it is quite similar to some of the Football Index users. For anybody who isn't aware, Football Index changed the dividend structure with 30 days notice, which meant that the prices of all the existing shares in the marketplace collapsed. So if you were to link this to Sorare, you might say, well, if they remove the prizes for the games, they change the overall value of the cards, and therefore the marketplace is highly likely to collapse because nobody can win any money using the cards that they're left holding. So the second point that I made was, can Sorare remove prizes without notice? Again, same issue there. And prizes are funded by the sale of new cards, which they deny in their answer, but it makes no sense. It says that the games are free to play. This is where it overlaps with another issue we'll talk about a little bit later on, but they're basically saying, look, it's free to enter the competition where you can win some money here. You don't have to do anything to win, and therefore it's not an issue, although you do have to own some cards that you had to buy in the first place. So I think that they've found a little bit of a workaround there, which overlaps with the gambling issue that you may have seen an article previously published on the website about. We'll come on to that in just a moment. So make what you will of their answer there on the first point. Personally, that just rules me out from the get-go. I'm not going to enter a game where they can change the game halfway through playing and I'll be left with some imaginary cards that quite frankly will be worth nothing because there'll be no games to play with them. Same with changing the payout. They say that it is linked to their marketing budget, but you would assume, you know, being a business going forward, their marketing budget's going to change, and it's going to change in line with how much money that they actually receive as a business. So that was a little bit concerning. And then also as an additional risk, I was concerned about the rate at which they create new cards, add new scarcity levels, and I've seen a few comments online around this. So the next question that I asked them was, I haven't found an official documentation, although I have seen rumours of a new scarcity level being introduced. Do you know that this is the case, and are there details available publicly? Okay, and they responded with, our vision is to build a game where football fans worldwide can connect, celebrate and share their football passion to build a game that all football fans can enjoy. We're designing a solution so that fans with smaller budgets can collect their favourite cards. So that's kind of like saying yes, I believe, at this point. This could lead to a new scarcity level, but there's nothing set in stone yet, so they're not going to reveal it. We're not in a position to communicate about this yet, as we're currently working with a game economist and a game designer to design the solution. It's kind of like the game is already ongoing though. People already own these cards, and introducing new scarcity levels is to change the game, which is what we were talking about in the previous point there, as is to add a vast amount of new cards. So there's new cards being added all the time, new leagues, new players, new seasons, and the more they add, the more it devalues the overall pool and chance of actually winning a prize, if you think, because the amount of entries involved. So not a very clear answer from them on that question, unfortunately. Now the next point that I really wanted to take head on, because this is where this comes into my motivation for why I would actually even be interested in doing this, and why I was interested in the previous Football Index situation as it started to evolve, and that is because it can affect me. So people may have seen a previous article I've put on the website, we'll put in a link in the description down below, but I asked them, look, is Sorare gambling? Okay, because as I understand it, it's a promotional game which is free to enter, but it's not free to enter because you have to hold the cards to win the prizes, and the prizes are paying out money. So it's a bit like, to run a similar comparison, if every bookmaker turned around and said, hey, look, if you buy some stickers off of us, we're going to give you a free bet each time you do that. Therefore, this is no longer betting. We're selling you stickers, you're buying them, and we no longer need regulating as this is not betting. That's how I viewed the Sorare model. And on the website, it says that you use cards to win prizes. So the whole product is being built around this game, which looks like betting, which raises other issues because obviously they're using cryptocurrency, which means it would be extremely hard to regulate. You couldn't do affordability checks, and it would mean that they would need to bypass a lot of regulation which is in place to protect people from unscrupulous bookmakers and themselves. So the question asked to Sorare directly was, at first glance it appears to me that Sorare is a gambling game that requires NFTs to play. For example, to win a prize in Division 4, users need to hold at least 4 rare cards, paid for or won, and 1 common card which is free. Could you explain why Sorare isn't gambling and therefore regulated? Bearing in mind that they'd had plenty of time to see my article on my website before this, and they were aware of it because they reached out to contact me. Their answer was, no, Sorare sells NFTs, cards, and in addition gives access to a free game. This game is reserved for card holders, free or acquired, as it exists for many services. So again, it feels as though they sort of sidestepped the question, not actually answered it head on, and much like the comparison that I made on my website that some people were upset about, it's a bit like in the UK where pub landlords have managed to get around coronavirus restrictions by turning around and saying, look, no, we sell pot noodles that give out a free pint with them and therefore we are a restaurant, so we can remain open. So that was a little bit disappointing, and it was very disappointing to see such a short answer that wasn't direct. Now, when I first raised this concern around gambling, a whole plethora of Sorare users and affiliates popped up and started to give me a bit of a hard time almost instantly. So a lot of them were asking the similar or same question, which I thought I'll address now within this review. So what is my motivation for doing this? Well, first of all, when my users ask me to do something, a review like this, they're obviously interested in it, so it creates a useful and interesting piece of content for my channel, so I have no issue with doing that. Previously, a couple of months back, or probably more like 6 months back now, I done the Football Index review and warned people that, you know, they were left with some virtual shares that were worth absolutely nothing unless they could sell to somebody else, which is very similar to Sorare because you're left with some virtual cards which is worth nothing unless you can sell it to somebody else. So that is my motivation initially. On top of that, there's a lot of industry scrutiny with gambling right now, and there's a lot of people out there that want to ban gambling. There's obviously vulnerable people that need to be protected from gambling, need to be protected from themselves, from making foolish decisions. So that's why I decided to make this review, because it doesn't reflect well on me and my business and everything that I do as well in terms of gambling for a living and the businesses around that, if things are not being scrutinised and regulated properly. So that's my reason for it. Obviously there are direct similarities to the Football Index model in the sense that if new money stops coming in, then the prices no longer rise for the cards. The marketing budget becomes smaller, therefore the rewards and prizes that are given out become less, which means it's less attractive, which means it's the complete opposite to the bubble that seems to be going up right now with Sorare, which is probably a key point where I should mention influencers. People have come back and said, hey look, Gary V, an online influencer, and others, I believe Rio Ferdinand's involved as well with Sorare, have recommended it as a good thing, and therefore that they believe in it for those reasons. There's lots of affiliates promoting it as a way to make money, trying to get people to sign up referrals for cards, and there's a lot of vested interest around this, and it's not my agenda to come along and attack this product for no particular reason, absolutely none whatsoever, but I'm quite happy to be open and honest and critical and share my own views, take them or leave them, around these products without a vested interest. So I think it's important just to add that in. Also, I noticed just recently the CEO has made some comments, said that Sorare had taken $30 million, $1 million a day in March, which seems extremely large for a virtual football card collecting company to take online. And I don't think it's particularly unfair for people to look at this and say that, you know, affiliates, influencers, people making comments about $30 million a month, investors such as Gary V, pumping up the product is artificially inflating this bubble, which is then going to affect other people and leave people that are overexposed, like we've seen with Football Index, have got too much money invested that they can't afford to lose, thinking it's investment opportunity where they were going to make money, when really the terms and conditions say, well, you know, when all's said and told, everything goes wrong, you're left with a virtual card which is of not a lot of use. So moving onwards, how do we price a card on Sorare? Okay, now in terms of valuing it, my first thoughts, the same as it was with Football Index, well, what are the payouts? What is the term that the payouts are likely to be over? What are the chances of winning said payouts? Once you can calculate those, then you can start to calculate a base level of what the card is actually valued at. But as we've already said, those terms can change in a heartbeat. The game can be removed, and they're literally reliant on greater fool theory. Somebody else says that somebody who's a greater fool than yourself will come along and pay more for it in the future at some point. So I'll be completely honest with you, in terms of valuing a card accurately and putting my name to how I would create that valuation, I would just say that the cards aren't really worth anything, because I can't guarantee that somebody else is going to come along and buy it, and I can't guarantee that the games aren't going to disappear or be drastically reduced. So there are 3 points to this overall big risk that you're taking a bit of a gamble on if you're somebody who's using Sorare, which is also not necessarily talked about like this. So I just want to add those quickly now and explain why. First of all, you are taking some form of gamble on the player's activity, behaviour, careers, if you should buy a card and you're looking to win a prize into the future. I think that's clear enough. I think a lot of people understand that risk, so that's not really such a big risk. On top of that, you're taking a gamble on the company Sorare. As I've previously said, what happens if the marketing budget diminishes? What happens if everybody starts selling their cards for whatever reason? What happens if future users are not interested in buying the cards? So that's the second gamble you're taking as an end user. And then third of all, you've got the cryptocurrency element. So over the recent months, I've seen an explosion of growth on Sorare. And that has also been in line with the cryptocurrency that is linked to Sorare. So a lot of people are saying, you know, oh, I've made X amount from buying cards on Sorare, isn't it great? Look, and they've attached Sorare's brand trust to that. But really, the reason underlying for that is the fact that Ethereum has gone up drastically over the last few months. So there's an additional risk here from a separate bubble, if you like, with some separate criteria. If Ethereum price should drop drastically, then everybody's holdings, if you like, of virtual cards on Sorare is going to drop drastically too. So at which point, one would assume, if it's completely flipped, users are then going to view the Sorare brand as a bad thing because the prices have drastically dropped. And when it comes to cashing out their money from cryptocurrency, they're probably also going to blame the drop in prices on Sorare, which is not great from a brand perspective as a company. But there's several different punts there. There's a punt on crypto, there's a punt on the players, and there's a punt on the company. That's the point that I want to make. Now there are a couple of other issues with that, because I know that you can take your cards and take them beyond the Sorare platform, which we'll come on to in a second. Let's not skip ahead. But the next point I want to touch on is scarcity, and there's often a lot of talk around scarcity with NFTs and with Sorare and how it actually makes them valuable. So I thought the best thing to do is just to flat out ask them. So the question I asked Sorare was, Sorare states that scarcity of a card is what creates its value with a select amount created per season. However, I've noticed more and more teams are being added regularly. Can you indicate how many new clubs and cards Sorare intends to add going forward? Their answer was, what creates value in the card is its scarcity, but also its collectible desirability. Each card will carry a unique level of desirability, and as a result, value to different people, represented serial numbers, nationality, club, etc. Going forward, we intend to onboard the top 20 leagues in the world to Sorare. The increase in supply of clubs and leagues has been a growth lever for us. From day one, as new clubs are available and new leagues, Sorare appeals to a wider audience and fans globally. So I get their answer there. I don't fully agree with it. To say that just increasing supply is going to increase the demand, I think is a little bit maybe naive. Obviously having more selection makes it possible for more people to be interested in Sorare, so that's fair enough. But in terms of the actual value, scarcity alone for a virtual digital collectible that doesn't actually have any use other than these games that can change, I don't know that that's enough of a value driver for people to be interested further into the future, quite frankly, particularly on scale for 20 leagues, all the clubs attributed to that, and the thousands of players and the multiple players in each multiple cards in each player. They're not comparable to, say, real world collectibles in the past, and I've seen a lot of people doing this online. But you know, if you had, say, I don't know, football cards from the 80s or 90s, when people weren't collecting them, that already is making it different. People weren't collecting them at the time. They're perishable. Lots have been lost. They're not kept in the same quality. They're not kept to the original boxes. All that kind of stuff. All of that has an impact. That doesn't happen for a NFT that's kept on the blockchain. So that's a pretty big difference already. If you compare it to something like art, which I know NFTs have been used for a lot, again, it's not, I mean, NFTs kind of work for art in a way, although, again, sort of 99.9% of them are going to be absolutely worthless going forward in the future, and people are going to do their money. So the only concern with this is people thinking that they've got something that they're invested in here that's going to be valuable, when quite honestly it's probably not at some point. But you know, real world art is different. Again, it's perishable. Rembrandt, for example, probably having done 30 or 40 works or something 400 years ago that have made it to the modern world, and that's why they're so expensive now. They weren't that expensive or that valuable when he created them, whereas these cards that are being minted now, some of them are going for thousands at a time, and they've just been created, and there's no guarantee that they'll even be a collectible in the future. So it's kind of like backwards. It's not the same as something like gold, because obviously gold has real world use. Even aside from jewellery, in other contexts, gold gets used, and as far as I'm aware, there isn't a mega corporation printing lots of gold and creating new gold every single day. So I don't see how they're just the same when people just flat out compare them, and I don't see that the scarcity is enough, quite frankly. So moving on, a few other slightly broader crypto type risk questions that I asked here to Sorare, and again I think maybe there's one question out of all of this where I don't feel that disappointed with the answer, but let's read them out, let's follow the answers and explain why I asked some of these as well. So first of all, I said, look, what can you explain what a user actually owns? Does it mean Sorare can block a user from withdrawing an image or code from their wallet? I can't see any statements saying Sorare transfers copyright or intellectual property of the cards in the terms and conditions. And that was with reference to a term in a line in the terms and conditions that says, by purchasing the collectible on the website, the user expressively waives his or her right of withdrawal. So they said it's a misunderstanding. The article refers to the right of withdrawal for every consumer, that every consumer is granted when making an online purchase. This means Sorare does not take back your card if you change your mind after the purchase. This right can be waived for digital purchases, as it is with Sorare cards, as long as it's made known to the customer. Okay, which is fair enough. It just didn't sound that specific in the terms and conditions. Another one that we've got here was to do with NFT maintenance, because I think some people don't realise this. But you can be responsible for maintaining your NFT in the event that the originator should disappear. So we've got the question here which says, is it correct that users would have to pay to maintain their NFTs if Sorare should disappear? When I say maintain, I mean maintain on the blockchain, and I've put in brackets IPFS there, which is a way in which that is done. Sorare said it's incorrect. A user could decide to store the document on any storage locally on their hard drive or any cloud storage, Google Drive, Dropbox, AWS. However, the user should make sure that they never lose the document. So I feel as though that sidestepped the question a bit there as well, because if you want to keep your NFT under something like IPFS, should Sorare disappear, then you will have to pay for that on to maintain on the blockchain. Next question was around taxes, okay, and there's an issue around taxes here to do with crypto, because you have to use crypto to withdraw your funds from Sorare, and there are other potential problems to this too, which we'll come on to in just one second. But the question was, as I understand it, capital gains tax is payable on crypto profits with services such as Coinbase reporting to HMRC in the UK. This is UK specific. Does Sorare plan to do this in the future, or is it down to the user? Sorare replied with, Sorare is subject to French regulation which provides for the transfer of information to the tax authorities on the profits made by the French sellers on our platform. Okay. Moreover, the tax authorities have significant legal capabilities to obtain information from every digital platform. Following these obligations, Sorare is committed to analysing each request and, if legitimate, collaborating with the tax authorities as any other company would do so. So just to be aware, if you're using Sorare and you make a significant profit off of the gain of the increase in the price of cars that you then manage to sell on, and you go to withdraw the money, you could be liable to pay capital gains tax, okay, which means that you need to submit your own tax filing to HMRC. And it also means, from their answer there, that although they're not saying they are actively now, they would quite happily hand over that tax information regarding a link to you to HMRC. So I think a lot of people should be aware of that. That's not something that I've seen Sorare pushing out and letting customers know as such, although, as I say, it is mentioned in their terms and conditions there, and that was their answer for that one. This also brings me on to another point. So I've got friends who's a financial advisor, and they recently told me that they've been rejecting people, the lenders and the people that they use through their services have been rejecting people for having crypto on their bank statement. This is a real world example. Somebody applied to get a mortgage and they had withdrawn £600 from Coinbase, and the mortgage provider rejected them because of that. Okay, so I also found some information online, but there's quite a few lenders, and if you look at the lender's terms and conditions, something like a mortgage, you could well find that using Sorare, crypto, stuff like that could end up impacting you financially in the real world when it comes to getting a mortgage, borrowing money, that kind of stuff. So just be aware of that. Now, this is something I've had first-hand experience with myself, where in the past made a significant amount of money through gambling, trading, sports odds, deposited that money into my own personal bank account, to then find that the bank froze my bank account for, it was around about 2.5, 3 months while they investigated where that money had come from. I told them repetitively that it had come from Betfair, trading the betting exchange. I showed them the statements, I pointed them at the information, and still the bank were quite difficult to deal with. They didn't really want to talk about things. They wouldn't tell me why they were freezing my account, and it went on going for quite a while, and it was quite a big pain to my life in the short term period of time at that point in time. Obviously I hadn't done anything wrong and had legitimately made the money, so after that period of time it was released again. But just bear that in mind if you're buying and selling crypto stuff, you've got money passing in and out your bank account. I think it's probably more likely that you'll experience that kind of thing when doing so. And then probably the last important crypto based issue that I noticed when looking around at some of these different points is the whole green issue. Okay, so Ethereum price has surged recently in the last few months. There's a lot of articles online, and the blockchain is using a significant amount of electricity at the moment. I know there are some plans in different areas to say that they want to make it greener, but you know, long and short of it is, as things go into the future, it's anticipated that more and more electricity is going to be used in the current format, and over a period of time that could become a large issue. Now, this product is linked to the blockchain, and that would obviously mean that that's part of your problem too if you're using Sorare. So last off, there was one remaining question that I submitted to them, which was, if you have any additional information about future plans and developments that you would like to share, please feel free. One follower said that it would be nice to hear about the future roadmap pitched in the recent investment round. I believe that was probably the investment round where Gary Vee submitted some money. So the future roadmap pitched in the investment round is similar and consistent with what we've been saying publicly. You can find more information on our long-term plan and vision on our fundraising in a blog post here. We'll put a link in the description below. We share our quarterly roadmap in Trello board here. All our data is publicly available in the API, blah, 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 blah. One of the great features of blockchain technology is that everything is traceable and transparent. This is also part of our company DNA and why we share as much as we can. But you didn't answer the questions a little bit more, because I don't feel these answers have been that transparent. A lot of the time they've actually answered a question that I haven't asked, and they've gone on to say something else. But I mean, that's fair enough. I said I'd share absolutely everything that they've responded there, so I have. Quite openly. But this brings me on to a couple of other things that I really wanted to touch on. So just this last week we've seen, I mean, there was a tweet from the CEO boasting that they took 30 million last month, dollars, and the platform has grown massively. There's been influencers such as Gary Vee, who, to be honest, I like some of the Gary Vee stuff I've seen, but you know, it's typical of Gary Vee to say, you know, this is the best thing since sliced bread, this NFTs. Oh, 99.9% of NFTs will probably actually be worth nothing. And then going forward 3 months, depending on what happened, he'll pick that one that actually happened and say, see, told you so. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on. A lot of pumping up is what I'm trying to say. A lot of pumping up of the product, and a lot of affiliates. And there's obviously the referral scheme with Sorare, where everybody who signs up can refer other people to get free cards. That is transparent on the blockchain, as they're saying there. And quite clearly, some people have opened up an account, referred 5 accounts on very similar or same dates, which has then entitled them to a free card, and then them accounts have all sent the cards that them accounts got back to the originator. So it basically looks like multi-accounting for Sorare card collecting. So there's lots of stuff like that going on, and affiliates pumping it up, promoting it as a way to make money rather than a way to just collect NFTs because you like collectibles, really, I guess. It's been promoted as a way to actually gain financially, and that's what concerns me more than anything. I did ask some questions about that in response to the tweets from CEO on Twitter, but nothing was actually said about how they maintain affiliates, or if they even do anything to maintain affiliates. But a lot of these places are pumping things up, having selective memory in certain areas, and I feel that they're not really being fully transparent and responsible in saying that, you know, this is just a collectible and there's a good chance that it won't actually be worth anything. Having a vested interest, they obviously don't want to do that, but I do find that quite misleading. Not misleading on the level that Football Index were being misleading, whereby the company was pushing it onto people and making lots of different promises. That hasn't happened, although I did actually see the CEO saying that they had blocked certain accounts because they were kind of like troll accounts, which is very familiar with Football Index, calling critics trolls rather than addressing the issues, which is a little bit sad to see. But yeah, so the misleading element is something that I've kind of observed as an outside observer. I find a little bit disappointing. So some people might be disappointed to find that I haven't gone deep on the actual platform here on this overall review. And the reality is, for that, is exactly the same as it was for Football Index when I've done that one. I've looked at, you know, a level of interest as somebody as outside that would be possibly getting involved in this. I've seen more than enough things to completely put me off of it, and that's why I haven't gone further on this review. But there's some important things shared there. We'll leave the comments open on YouTube here, so if you've got anything to add to that, please feel free to do so, and check out another video on the channel here in the end screen.